Hello, everyone. My name is Nathan Roll. I am a graduating senior international relations major, Spanish minor, and I'm also a Spanish tutor with Douglas Academic Resource Center. And I bring here to you a Spanish tutorial. In this segment, this is one of many segments I'm going to be doing. With this particular segment, I'm going to be discussing different tenses in Spanish that I realize a lot of students have been having difficulty with. So the tenses are the present, the preterite, the imperfect, the subjunctive, and the future. And all of these tenses are very essential, not only to Spanish, but to every language you do, because languages are made of tenses. And to progress in Spanish and be a better Spanish speaker or a better student of Spanish, you have to master the tenses. And once you master the tenses in Spanish, you can never go wrong. The real question is, ¿qué es un tiempo? So what is a tense? Simply, a tense is a grammatical frame of reference. Almost every language uses it. I think every language does use tenses. You need tenses to speak. I'm using tenses right now as I speak. Tenses are very essential in informing grammatical clarity, fluidity, coherence, and everything throughout languages. And as I said earlier, once you know how to use tenses, how to conjugate, and when I say conjugate, to conjugate a tense means that you break it into a different form to match the subject of what you're talking about. And I'm going to further explain that as I go along in the tutorial. But yes, definitely a tense is a grammatical frame of reference and it's needed in every language, especially Spanish. But Spanish has many tenses. I think Spanish has up to 12. But as of right now, we're only going to be using about maybe 5 to 6 of them, especially at the stage that we are at right now. So, of course, I'm going to start off with the most key essential tense in Spanish, the present tense. So, once you master the present tense, you can master any other tense, but you have to know the present tense. And with the use of the present tense is used to simply denote something that is currently happening. It's to denote an action that is in progress, an action that is happening as we speak right now. Like right now, I am talking, but in Spanish, we have to translate that and understand how those words correlate with one another. So what I'm going to be explaining now are the regular verbs in present tense. Because the thing with Spanish has regular verbs in each tense and irregular verbs. And this is where it gets a little tricky. But I'm going to explain that further along as I go, so that we can clarify that together. So with regular verbs in the present tense, you have a. So first of all, as you all know, infinitives in Spanish all end in ar, er, and ir verbs. And what an infinitive is in Spanish, an infinitive is any verb in Spanish. Anything that is a verb, whether it's andar, comer, viajar, luchar, saltar, all verbs in Spanish are infinitive. And they only end in AR, ER, and IR verbs. So that's how you know it's an infinitive in Spanish. So when conjugating in the present tense, we have to look at AR verbs first. We can look at AR verbs first. So if it's an AR verb, and you're talking about, I'm talking about myself, the endings are O. But simply, just to go across the board, AR verbs in the present tense Spanish end in O, as, a, amos, ais, an. So as you can see in the purple, O, as, a, amos, ais, an. ER verbs in the present tense in Spanish end in O, es, hemos, eis, en. And IR verbs in the present tense end in O, es, imos, is, en. Now, the thing with the vosotros form, where you see the A's, you see the A's, the is, on this part of the world, we don't really use it. So most Spanish classes, I'm sure yours too, you probably don't use it. Some people do, but some people don't. But you just keep that in mind. I never really grew up using it, doing Spanish, most of my life, because it's only native to Spain, so we don't really use that, have any use for it. But it's good to know just in case. But hey, you see, these are all your endings, and please take note of all these endings when conjugating for the present tense. Now here, we're going to test out the present tense, the regular present tense, I should say. Now, as I said earlier, the present tense is used to denote an action that is in progress or currently happening. Let me give you a few examples. For example, Amanda is walking in the mansion. Amanda is our subject. Is walking is our action. Is the verb. Is the infinitive that needs to be conjugated. In the mansion is the rest of the sentence. So what we do when we conjugate a verb, the simplest way, grab the subject, Amanda, take the linking verb, and the verb is walking. The verb itself is walking is the verb. Now, we know in Spanish, and this is also where vocabulary is important. I always encourage, my tutees to study their vocabulary, meticulously, because in Spanish, as any other language, it's important to know vocabulary to maneuver along as well. But to walk in Spanish is andar. So, or caminar. So it's either or, but I use caminar. So when I conjugated it, Amanda camina en la mansión. It's also supposed to be an accent on that O right there. So please disregard that. So what I want to say is the reason why it's caminar. Caminar with an R is the word itself. Now when you conjugate in Spanish, the AR, ER, and IR verbs, you take the ending of the verb, which is the AR, the ER, or IR part, you literally cross that out and you replace it with the conjugated ending as shown in the last table. So caminar is an AR verb, so you would go to your table, and eventually you'd have to study this for yourself and make your own mental table. But you would go back to the AR verb table, you would see who is the subject referring to. Amanda, is she a he, she, it, is she a we, is she an I? But Amanda is clearly a she. So she would fall under the third ending, under él, ella, usted. So it'd be a. That AR replaced with a. So that's why it's camina en la mansión. And the same thing goes for this other example. Joanna and I are living in Arizona. So Joanna and I refers to we. I'm involved with that. Whenever you're involved with something, a group, or with a person, that subject automatically becomes we. So Joanna and I are living in Arizona. So Joanna y yo vivimos in Arizona. So once again, go back to your IR verbs in your chart. Vivir is the verb to live. You cross out the IR, add the imos, that's how you get vivimos. Now I think this would be the best time for you guys to try it out. Test it out for yourself, see what you understand from this. Because if you understand this moving forward with the present tense, you can move forward to the next stage, which you're about to approach with the irregular present tense verbs. So please, I want you to try these 3 examples. And if you have any problems or any complications, please email me at Nathan, that's Nathan, .rolle at ROLLE at morehouse.com. At morehouse.edu, sorry. Now we come down to el presente irregular, the irregular present tense verbs. So, what are irregular verbs in any tense in Spanish? Irregular verbs, those irregular infinitives or verbs, are those that basically don't follow a pattern. I don't know if you guys see, but when we worked on the last chart with the irregular present tense, they also had something in common. Regardless of what the word was, it followed that same sequence of patterns with the endings, whether it's AR verb endings, ER verb endings, or IR verb endings. So what makes irregular verbs irregular is that they don't follow a pattern. They follow a weirder sequence that you can't rely on a table to understand. So most of the verbs, irregular present tense verbs that you guys will be using at this stage of Spanish, most of them will be like ser, estar, tener, ir, haber. So ser is to be, and also I'm going to be talking more about ser, estar, tener, hacer, and ir in my next slide. But the endings of ser are soy, eres, es, somos, sois, son. Ir, it would be voy, vas, va, vamos, vais, van. Haber would be asa, hemos, habéis, and tener would be tengo, tienes, tiene, tenemos, tienen. Estar would be estoy, estás, está, estamos, están. And ir, well, it's already there, so you see. Now, with this slide, we want to be talking more about ser versus estar versus tener versus hacer versus ir. So in these few slides, I'm going to be talking about what are the uses of these language. I'm going to be, talking about their conjugations, how to use them in sentences, how to distinguish them, how do you know when it's appropriate to use these irregular present tense verbs. So here we have ser. Ser is what, once again I said, means to be, just to be. And ser has two main uses across Spanish. It's used for descriptive means. So, for example, the car is red, el carro es rojo. Also using ser, you could use ser to describe like a car, a person, a thing, anything. I could say my house is large, my house is green. The Morehouse is a good school, or the world is large, or this COVID-19 pandemic is crazy. Stuff like that is what we call description, using describing the noun, just like how we do it in English, through color, size, anything, So that's what descriptions are with ser. Definitely when you see something being described, it's definitely ser. And also stating factual information. President Donald Trump is the president of the United States. That is a fact. Or Morehouse College is an HBCU. La Universidad Morehouse is an HBCU. Or the United States is a country made of 50 states. Or, stuff like that. Or stuff like John is a student. Or, quote, stuff like Martin Luther King, it was or is a famous civil rights activist. So you get the idea. And now we have a star. What's so funny about it is star also means to be, but it still has different uses. So this is where it gets a little tricky. So a star is used definitely, primarily, if all things, for location. When we give location in Spanish, we always use a form of a star. Like, I give an example. His mother is at the mall. Su madre está en el centro comercial. Or if I'm saying we are at the beach, or the food stand or food truck is near the beach, or his shirt is on the table, or the basket is on the desk, or the air conditioning is to the right of the class. Anything regarding location at all of a person, place, thing, you're designating the location, positionality of something. You always use a star. And also another important use of a star is temporary emotions and feelings. So if I say something like estoy cansado, I am tired, or estoy enojado, I'm angry. Ella está enojada, she is angry. Whenever you're denoting feelings, temporary emotion, temporary states of emotion, you always use a star. So it's very essential in knowing that further on in your Spanish journey. And now we have a star. What's so funny about it is star also means to be, but it still has different uses. So this is where it gets a little tricky. So a star is used definitely, primarily, if all things, for location. When we give location in Spanish, we always use a form of a star. Like, I give an example. His mother is at the mall. Su madre está en el centro comercial. Or if I'm saying we are at the beach, or the food stand or food truck is near the beach, or his shirt is on the table, or the basket is on the desk, or the air conditioning is to the right of the class. Anything regarding location at all of a person, place, thing, you're designating the location, positionality of something. You always use a star. And also another important use of a star is temporary emotions and feelings. So if I say something like estoy cansado, I am tired, or estoy enojado, I'm angry. Whenever, or ella está enojada, she is angry. Whenever you're denoting feelings, temporary emotion, temporary states of emotion, you always use a star. So it's very essential in knowing that further on in your Spanish journey. Then we also have tener. Tener is also very essential. Tener is used to indicate possession. For example, I have a pen. Tengo un bolígrafo. Or she has a dress. He has a TV. Or he has a large bag. Anything regarding possession, having something, or being, I have red hair, or I have brown hair, I have blue eyes, anything like that. Possession or ownership or anything, you definitely use tener. Also regarding age, tener is definitely have use is a no brainer for that age because whenever you say tengo 16 años or Emma tiene 16 años, regardless, whenever you're translating age or saying I am a certain age, you use TNA. And what the reason why they use TNA is because literally it means I have I have been on this earth for this long. That's how it's literally translated, but not trans. It's not translated that way, but that's how it's literally written to mean that particular thing. So I have this amount of age, or I've been on earth for this amount of time. That's why we use tenir with age. Hacer is also a very essential infinitive in Spanish. It literally means to do or to make. For example, I'm doing my homework. Hago mi tarea. So whenever you use hacer is a verb. It is also one of the go-go verbs. And I'm gonna be further explain some of the go-go verbs when I go and what a go-go verb means when I go further along in the lesson. You see ago. You don't see me. You didn't see me write aso, and there's a reason for that. I'm going to further explain that. But also hacer is used for weather. So whenever you say the weather like hace calor or hace frío or hace viento, so we use hacer as an expression. It's like it's like a illiteral connotative expression sometimes when in Spanish. So that's how that one goes. So we also have ear. Ear in itself means to go. And you see I put a little pun right there, going somewhere. And the endings of ear are voy, vas, va, vamos, van, as shown in the earlier um, table for reference. So let me give you an example of me using it. I'm going to the park. Voy al parque. And I know some of you might be wondering why I use al in that sentence. So whenever you're writing a sentence with ear, there's a certain formula. You use a form of ear, conjugated form of ear, plus a. And the reason you use a means to. So when you say to, I'm going to a place, a. Definitely always a. When I'm going on a place, n. When I'm going at a place, n. So don't get them confused. People usually get them confused. A means to. N means in, on, or at. So that's very essential. I'll say that again. N means on, in, or at. A means to. But anyway, going further along, form of ear plus a plus the rest of the sentence. And then also the reason why I have al. And whenever you're writing out your sentence with ear, if you have a followed by a place which starts with el, a plus l joins together in Spanish to do al. And the reason it does that in Spanish is for pronunciation reasons, for grammatical pronunciations. Because it will sound weird saying a él, voy a el parque. And rather, it's easy and it's smoothly rolling off the tongue when I say voy al parque rather than voy a el parque. So Spanish does this for pronunciation reasons. So it's also an important thing to note when you see sentences like that. Now you see here we have our um, stem changing go-go verbs with the present tense. So as I said earlier, the go-go verbs. So what go-go verbs are, as I said, stem changing verbs in the irregular present tense. So you see a form I use hacer and it's hago. These are just verbs that you have to know are stem changing. In Spanish, just, targets these specific particular words as go-go verbs. So you have kepo, caigo, doy, hago, pongo, se, salgo, traigo, calgo. So it's also very essential, and for you guys to read up on this, understand which words to identify when you see them. But usually in your level, they'll let you know. But these are usually the words that are used in everyday life that are go-go verbs that you'd have to worry about. So these are all of them right here. Now in Spanish we have el pretérito, and el pretérito is the preterite, and in English is basically our past tense. So, guys know what the present is about. The present tense is used in Spanish for anything that happened in the past. It's not happening anymore. It happened within a certain period of time, within a certain pocket of time, and it's gone. Simple. So, in AR, the AR endings in preterite are aste, o, amos, asteis, aron. The ER, they are iste, io, imos, isteis, ieron. In the IR, they're iste, io, imos, isteis, ieron. So just simply that. So I'm going to show you guys some examples. Matt opened the door yesterday. Matt, who is the subject, Matt abrió la puerta ayer. And the reason why it is preterite is because it happened yesterday. Yesterday is gone. The action has already been done. And the action has the ED. It has already happened. They ate fried chicken in the cafeteria. Ellos comieron pollo frito en la cafeteria. They ate fried chicken. Ate denotes it happened. It's done. The chicken is gone. They ate everything. Now I want you guys to try it out. I put a few examples, one from each, verb ending. So Mark ran to his house. I also helped you guys a little. I put the Spanish conjugation and the Spanish infinitive in the brackets that needs to be conjugated. You talked a lot yesterday, semana pasada. To talk is hablar, just in case you need to know to translate. I traveled to England. Inglaterra means England. Last month. So last month it'll be el mes pasado. And travel, is viajar. So I want you guys to please try that out. And once again, as I said, if you have any questions or anything, please email me at nathan.roll@morehouse.edu. Now, the imperfect tense in Spanish, the preterite imperfect could be a little tiny bit tricky because the uses of the imperfect is also used to express the past, but the imperfect is used to express a past that is still going on. If that makes sense. A past action that is still progressively happening. Or an action that happened that you did in the past, but it's habitual. And I'm going to show you some examples as we go further along. But these are the endings of AR verbs, ER verbs, and IR verbs in the imperfect, the preterite imperfect. So you have habla, hablas, habla, hablamos, habláis, hablan, hablaban. Aban. Then you have comía, comías, comía, comíamos, comías, comían. Then you have vivía, vivías, vivía, vivíamos, vivías, vivían. So those are the endings. And so I don't know if you realize something. The ER and IR endings are literally the same. Literally. Yes, the AR endings are different. So this should be a little easier when conjugating this one. Okay, like the present tense and the preterite tense, the imperfect tense also has irregular verbs. So you have ir, ser, ver, tener, estar, all the exact same words that are irregular in those other tenses. What I would say you'd be using more of ser, ir, and tener, and maybe estar, because those are what usually at this stage that professors test you on. So you have ir, you have iba, ibas, iba, ibamos, ibais, iban. You have ser, era, eras, era, éramos, erais, eran. Ver, you have veía, veías, veía, veíamos, veíais, and veían. Tener, you have tenía, tenías, tenía, teníamos, tenían. So, and for words like hacer, you'll hacía, 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 hacíamos, hacían. So it's also very important in knowing and studying these forms, these tables, because they communicate a lot to you that you need to know when conjugating verbs in Spanish. And as I said earlier, the uses of the imperfect are for habitual active actions that something you do every day, every other week, every other thing, like you do all the time, all that. An action happened, but it's continuously happening, and used to express weather and time. So I want you guys to try it out. So Mark ran to his house every day. You talked a lot since you were 10 years old. I traveled to England every summer. Now, I know a lot of you probably haven't learned the future tense, and I don't expect you to learn it that far as yet because this is usually higher upper level tense. This is usually where they cut the tense in 202. 202 is probably the last tense you're ever going to learn, unless you go further to learn Spanish in the 300 levels. But so in Spanish, we have the AR, the ER, the IR endings. So let's say in the future. So I would say the future, in my opinion, is a bit easier because with the future, you just place the entire infinitive. You don't remove the ER, the AR, or the IR, or anything. You keep the whole verb, and all you have to do is add these highlighted endings that are in bold. So for AR, you literally just keep the infinitive. You add as, a, hemos, an. For ER and IR, which are once again the same, you would do. Actually, they're all the same if you look at it. They're pretty much all the same. That's the thing about the future tense. That's why it's my favorite. Because there's literally you don't have to memorize. Once you know it. You don't have to memorize for AR, ER, or IR. You literally just put the entire infinitive and you conjugate for all of that, whether it's AR, ER, IR verbs. So please pay attention and study this table that I created keenly, please. And once again, the use of the future tense to express actions that are about to happen are going to happen. But once again, I expect you guys to fully know the future tense yet, unless you're in 202. Usually some professors stop at this tense in 202 unless you're going further above in Spanish or Spanish major or minor. But it's good to know. It's good to know because you never know where you're going to need this tense. Now, as you can see, an example here, I'll be eating paella tomorrow. So yo comeré paella mañana. So it's literally that simple. You have the infinitive, just add the ending, and you're good to go. That's why I like the future tense so much. Now, a lot of you have been talking to me about the subjunctive mood, and that's not a tense. A lot of people say it's a tense, but in reality, in Spanish, it's not really a tense. It's a mood because it expresses stuff. It doesn't really denote action. It expresses a command. It expresses a want, a desire, a need, a doubt. That's why it's a mood. It's not really a tense. So I'm happy to really explain, what the difference between the subjunctive and all these other tenses I've helped you learn because it's not really a tense, and I'm only grouping it because it is something that I feel is a gray cloud area for many people. But with the subjunctive, I always tell people to remember the acronym WEIRDO. WEIRDO. W stands for wishes and wants. E stands for emotions. I stands for impersonal expressions. R stands for recommendation. D stands for doubt and denials. O stands for ojalá. So once you memorize all of those uses, you should go pretty far with the subjunctive. Once you just know weirdo, understand weirdo, you can never go wrong with subjunctive. And what's so unique about the subjunctive? The AR, ER, and IR endings are literally switching roles. As you can see by this table, they're switching roles. So the endings that would be for a present tense ER verb, an IR verb would be the ending for an AR verb. And the ending for an AR verb in the present tense would be the ending for an ER and IR verb. So with the subjunctives, the endings switch when you conjugate them. So that's the only thing that's different, as you can see by the table. But it's fairly simple.